If you're over 60, there's one thing you do every night that could be silently increasing your risk of a stroke. No pain, no dizziness, no dramatic warning signs. You feel fine when you go to bed. But sometime during the night, while your body is still and your mind drifts into sleep, something changes. You wake up the next morning confused, your speech slurred, or your arm unable to move. A stroke. Sudden, silent, life-altering, and the most unsettling part. It may have nothing to do with your diet, your blood pressure, or your exercise routine. It may come down to something no one ever warned you about: how you sleep. As a brain doctor, I've seen this scenario play out far too often. Healthy, active seniors, doing everything right by the book, but still waking up to find their lives forever changed. And when we dig deeper, we find the same culprits over and over again. Certain sleeping positions, nighttime postures, evening habits that disrupt circulation, strain blood vessels, compress arteries in the neck, or spike blood pressure at the worst possible time during deep sleep when your body can't respond in time. Today, I'm going to walk you through 9 common nighttime mistakes that may be quietly increasing your risk of stroke after 60. And more importantly, I'll show you simple changes you can make starting tonight to protect your brain, your speech, your mobility, and your independence if you or someone you love is over 60. Please stay with me. This could be the most important health video you see this year. And before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another tip designed specifically for your health and safety. If this already sounds helpful, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can do better for you. Let's begin. 1. Sleeping flat on your back with no pillow. Supine head level. Sleeping flat on your back with no pillow might seem like a peaceful and even healthy habit. For many older adults, it's the position they've used for decades. It feels natural, comforting, and for some, it's believed to help with back alignment or breathing. But there's a hidden danger few talk about. When you lie completely flat, with your head at the same level as your heart, you may be increasing your risk of stroke during the most vulnerable hours of the night and not even know it. You see, as the body ages, the blood vessels in your neck and brain become stiffer. They don't adjust as easily to pressure changes. Blood flow becomes more sluggish. And most importantly, the veins responsible for draining blood from your brain must now work harder against gravity. This may not matter much when you're young, but after trids, it becomes a serious problem. Without any head elevation, blood can begin to pool in the brain's venous system. That pooling creates stagnation. And stagnant blood is one of the key ingredients in clot formation. Add to that natural overnight dehydration, lowered oxygen saturation during deep sleep, and a morning blood pressure surge, and you've got a perfect recipe for a silent stroke, one that happens while you sleep. I treated a man named Leonard Whitaker, 77 years old. A retired mechanic from Michigan, still worked on engines, still walked 2 miles a day. Strong, independent, proud. He slept flat every night. No pillow. He said he picked up the habit in the Navy and stuck with it ever since. But one morning, his wife Mary found him sitting up in bed, unable to speak. His right side wouldn't move. He was confused and terrified at the hospital. Scans confirmed a clot in his left middle cerebral artery and ischemic stroke. He didn't have a history of heart disease, no recent trauma, but he did have stiff carotid arteries and a long-standing habit of sleeping flat, something we believe contributed to slowed venous drainage and blood thickening overnight. The consequences were devastating. Leonard survived, but he never fully recovered. His speech is slow. He uses a walker, and every night, Mary now positions him with a wedge pillow to gently elevate his head and reduce the pressure on his brain. What many people don't understand is that even a small tilt around 30 degrees can dramatically improve blood flow and reduce stroke risk. Elevating the head helps gravity assist with venous return, lowers intracranial pressure, and stabilizes nighttime oxygen delivery to the brain. But it must be done right. Don't just pile on soft pillows that cause the chin to fall forward. That can restrict breathing. Instead, choose a firm pillow that supports the natural curve of the neck, or invest in a wedge or adjustable base that allows your head and upper body to rise in alignment. This is especially critical for older adults with high blood pressure, sleep apnea, atrial fibrillation, or a history of carotid disease. These conditions already place extra stress on the brain's vascular system. A flat sleeping position only adds fuel to the fire. And here's the most important part. You won't feel this damage happening. There's no warning, no chest pain, no shortness of breath. Just a silent shift in pressure and flow that builds until something breaks. Leonard told me, if someone had told me this was dangerous, I would have changed my habits years ago. So let me be that someone for you today. Don't wait for a scare. Make a small change now to protect everything you've worked for. But if sleeping flat can create such quiet risk, what happens when you sleep face down, twisting your neck into angles that squeeze off key blood vessels? That's what we'll explore in point number 2. Stay with me. 2. Sleeping face down. Prone position. Sleeping on your stomach may feel safe, familiar, even comforting. Many older adults prefer it because it eases pressure on their back or helps them feel secure at night. But what most don't realize is that this seemingly harmless habit may quietly be increasing their risk of stroke every single night. In the medical world, this is known as the prone position. For younger, flexible bodies with healthy arteries and strong respiratory systems, the risks may be low. But for older adults, especially those with stiff arteries, slower circulation, or lower oxygen tolerance during sleep, the dangers are real and deeply underestimated. When you sleep face down, your neck must rotate sharply to one side to allow you to breathe. This rotation puts direct pressure on the vertebral arteries vessels responsible for carrying oxygen-rich blood to the back of your brain, the area that controls coordination, balance, and alertness. At the same time, the soft tissues around your neck and shoulders press against the carotid arteries. These critical pathways carry blood to your brain's cognitive centers. When compressed, blood flow slows down. Veins that are supposed to drain used blood from your brain can become kinked. That stagnation, particularly in people with vascular narrowing or low hydration, creates the perfect environment for small clots to form. And once formed, Those clots can sit silently until the early morning surge in blood pressure dislodges them and sends them directly into the brain. I remember a woman named Ethel Lawson, 82 years old, retired school teacher from Ohio. Her daughter found her one morning still on her stomach, struggling to speak, with no movement on the left side of her body. In the ER, scans revealed a cerebellar stroke, an event that impacted her coordination and mobility. There was no major heart disease, no cholesterol emergency. But there was age-related narrowing of her carotid arteries and hours spent with her neck twisted and compressed while sleeping. That was all it took. The clot formed in the night. By sunrise, her world had changed. Ethel survived, but her life was never the same. She now uses a walker and has difficulty speaking in full sentences. She told me, "I had no idea my sleeping position could steal so much from me. Scientifically, this all makes sense. When the neck is twisted more than 45 degrees in the prone position, blood flow through the vertebral arteries can be reduced by over 40%. Combine that with chest compression that restricts lung expansion, and your oxygen saturation drops. That alone is dangerous. But then consider what happens when you add snoring, sleep apnea, or sedatives into the mix. Your body's ability to detect and respond to low oxygen plummets. At 30, your brain might jolt you awake to reposition. At 80, it might not. And that silence, that lack of response, is exactly how a stroke begins unnoticed. If you or someone you love sleeps on their stomach, it's time to reconsider. Start by transitioning to your side with a supportive pillow, or try sleeping slightly inclined on your left side, which helps improve both brain and heart circulation. Avoid soft, sinking mattresses that force your head into deep angles. And never underestimate the pressure your sleeping posture places on the arteries that keep you alive. Because what feels safe might be quietly cutting off blood supply to your brain. But there's one more habit, even more common and even more misunderstood: sleeping on your favorite side when your shoulder or hip hurts. It may seem like the obvious solution for comfort, but the way pressure builds on one side of the body can do more than cause stiffness. It can quietly reduce blood flow and increase your stroke risk in the most unexpected way. Stay with me. 3. Sleeping with a heavy blanket over the head. Many older adults hold on to a small habit from childhood that feels comforting and familiar, pulling a blanket up over the head before falling asleep. Maybe it's to block out light from a hallway or the sound of a snoring partner. Maybe it's just the warm, safe feeling of being cocooned in quiet darkness. But what almost no one realizes is that for seniors, this innocent routine can slowly turn deadly. When you sleep with a heavy blanket over your head, you aren't just shielding yourself from light or noise, you're also cutting off airflow. Over time, especially through the deeper stages of sleep, this limited ventilation creates a pocket of air rich in carbon dioxide, the gas your body is trying to exhale and increasingly deprived of oxygen. At younger ages, your brain and body might have been able to tolerate the occasional drop in oxygen, but as we age, everything changes. Blood vessels stiffen, circulation slows, and the brain becomes far more sensitive to even slight oxygen reductions. Now combine that with overnight dehydration, slower breathing during REM sleep, and a heavy quilt sealing off your airspace. It's a perfect storm for clot formation. Let me tell you about Richard Hale, an 81-year-old retired postmaster from Iowa. His wife told me he had always been a quiet man, thoughtful and steady. And for as long as she could remember, he had pulled his blanket up over his head to sleep. It makes me feel like I'm in a little cave. He once said, but one winter morning, Richard didn't wake up like he usually did. He was still breathing, but barely responsive. When paramedics arrived, they found his blood oxygen levels frighteningly low, and at the hospital, a scan revealed a small ischemic stroke had occurred sometime during the night. There was no atrial fibrillation. His cholesterol was fine. The doctors ruled out the usual suspects. But there was one red flag. The stroke had occurred deep in a region of the brain vulnerable to low oxygen and slow blood flow. When we reviewed his sleep habits, it became clear rebreathing. Stale air under a heavy blanket had slowly dropped his oxygen saturation. And in an aging brain with stiffened arteries, that was enough to allow a clot to form and lodge. Richard survived, but he no longer walks without help. His memory is weaker, and he told me later, if I had known what that blanket was doing to me, I would have changed it years ago. This isn't fear-mongering. This is physiology. When your body doesn't get enough oxygen during sleep, your heart rate rises to compensate. Blood vessels constrict and blood becomes thicker, more prone to clotting, especially in the early morning hours when blood pressure naturally surges. This lack of oxygen can be the last push needed to send a clot into the brain. Medical research has confirmed that even mild nocturnal hypoxia, oxygen levels dropping below normal during sleep, is strongly linked to stroke and cognitive decline in older adults. And it doesn't just affect people with sleep apnea. Anyone with disrupted airflow or poor sleep posture is at risk. So what should you do instead? If you sleep with a blanket over your head for comfort, start by making your room warmer so you don't feel the need to cover your face. Use a sleep mask to block out light or soft earplugs for noise. Choose lightweight, breathable bedding and keep your nose and mouth uncovered so your body can exhale properly and take in fresh oxygen. These changes are small, but they matter because your brain can't fight for oxygen while you sleep. It depends on you to provide it. Richard's story is one I carry with me often because it reminds me that comfort and safety are not the same thing. What feels warm and familiar may actually be placing deadly pressure on your vascular system. But as dangerous as a blanket over your head might be, the next sleeping habit millions rely on could be even worse, resting your arm under your pillow. It feels harmless, but what if that one movement was slowly cutting off blood flow to your brain all night long? Let's explore that next. 4. Sleeping upright in a recliner. Frequent in seniors with back pain? For many older adults, sleep becomes more complicated with age. Not just falling asleep, but staying asleep without pain, stiffness, or discomfort. Conditions like acid reflux, arthritis, spinal stenosis, or breathing issues push many seniors to abandon their bed entirely. The recliner chair becomes the go-to solution. It feels practical, supportive, and familiar. You adjust the angle just right, pull up a soft blanket, maybe drift off with the television humming in the background. Over time, that temporary solution becomes routine. But here's what almost no one tells you. Sleeping upright in a recliner, especially night after night, may quietly increase your risk of stroke, and you may never feel it coming. The human circulatory system is designed for sleep in a horizontal position. When you lie flat, your brain and heart operate on the same plane, allowing for stable blood flow, pressure regulation, and even oxygen distribution. But in a recliner, especially one tilted between 45 and 60 degrees, gravity starts working against you. Blood is pulled down into the lower extremities. At the same time, the bend at your hips and knees compresses the major veins, returning blood to the heart. This combination slows down circulation, especially in the legs, and creates a perfect setup for clot formation. In younger people, this isn't a major concern. Their blood is thinner, vessels more elastic, and heart more efficient. But after 60, things change. Blood thickens due to dehydration. Arteries stiffen. The venous system becomes more vulnerable, and prolonged periods of immobility in a semi-upright posture can allow clots to form in the lower legs, small, sticky threads that travel upward toward the lungs or brain during the early morning hours. That's when disaster strikes. Let me tell you about Mrs. Barbara Keene, a 79-year-old retired florist from Kentucky. She was cheerful, active, still loved arranging flowers for her church. But after a hip replacement, lying flat was too painful. So she moved into a recliner just for a few weeks. She said, but weeks turned into years. One morning, her daughter came to check on her and found Barbara dazed and slurring her words. She couldn't lift her left hand. In the ER, doctors confirmed she had suffered a lacunar stroke, a small but deep ischemic stroke caused by a clot blocking a tiny blood vessel in the brain. Barbara had no known heart disease. Atrial fibrillation. What she did have was poor leg circulation and signs of blood pooling from prolonged recliner use. Her ankles were often swollen. She'd get dizzy standing up. These were red flags. But no one had connected them to her sleeping position until it was too late. Here's the medical truth. Sleeping upright weakens your barrel reflex, the mechanism your body uses to regulate blood pressure. In flat sleep, your heart and brain communicate more efficiently. But when you're semi-upright, that reflex gets dulled. Blood pressure becomes unstable, particularly dangerous in seniors on medications that lower pressure too much at night. Add in limited leg movement, tight socks, low fluid intake, and you create a perfect storm. The brain is robbed of proper circulation while the legs become a breeding ground for clots. If you or someone you love sleeps in a recliner, please take this seriously. Recliners are fine for resting, short naps, or recovery, but for full overnight sleep, they can slowly erode your vascular health. If sleeping flat is not an option, invest in a proper adjustable bed that raises the torso gently without cutting off circulation. Use compression stockings if prescribed. Stay hydrated. And move your legs frequently to support healthy blood flow. Barbara now sleeps in a bed again, with a soft wedge and a pillow between her knees. She told me, I thought I was protecting my hip. I didn't realize I was risking my brain. She's right. Because sometimes the greatest danger isn't in movement. It's in staying still in the wrong position for too long. But even the recliner isn't the most dangerous habit. I've seen That title might go to the most common side sleeping posture among older adults. Resting your arm under your pillow. Coming up next, I'll explain how this one familiar position might be cutting off blood supply to your brain every single night. Stay with me. 5. Sleeping on the right side with arm under pillow, most dangerous. Millions of older adults find comfort in one familiar position every night. Lying on their right side, head resting on a soft pillow, arm tucked beneath for support. It feels natural, safe, like something your body has known for decades. But what if I told you this exact position might be the most dangerous way a senior can sleep? Not because it causes pain or discomfort in the moment, but because it quietly restricts blood flow to the brain while you sleep, night after night, hour after hour, until one morning. Everything changes. When you sleep on your right side with your arm under your pillow, you're placing direct pressure on some of the most critical blood vessels in your body. The carotid artery runs up the side of your neck, delivering oxygen-rich blood to your brain. The subclavian artery and jugular vein, both essential for moving blood in and out of the head, also lie just beneath the collarbone and shoulder. When you compress these vessels with the full weight of your head and arm, blood flow begins to slow. Not in a dramatic way, you'd notice right away, but enough that over time, circulation is compromised. Blood pools. Veins collapse slightly. Arteries narrow. And in older adults whose vessels are already stiff or narrowed from age, this is enough to start clot formation. That clot may sit there for hours, is harmless, until just before dawn, when your body naturally increases blood pressure in preparation for waking. That small spike is enough to dislodge the clot and send it straight to your brain, and in seconds, a stroke occurs. I remember Mr. Ellis Randall, a 75-year-old retired Army mechanic from North Carolina. He was active, proud, never missed a morning walk. He told me once he had slept on his right side since basic training. It helped him fall asleep faster, and he always tucked his arm under the pillow to support his neck. But one morning, his wife found him unable to speak, his left leg limp. In the hospital, we discovered a right hemisphere ischemic stroke caused by a clot in the middle cerebral artery. His cholesterol was fine. No history of smoking or diabetes. But his carotid ultrasound told the rest of the story: mild plaque. But more importantly, compression injuries from years of side sleeping had likely restricted flow night after night. And that one clot, born in silence, nearly stole his independence. Ellis now walks with assistance and has regained partial speech through therapy. But the real heartbreak came from his words during our follow-up. He said, "I thought I was doing everything right. I had no idea something as small as the way I sleep could change my life. But this position doesn't just threaten blood flow, it also compresses the brachial plexus, a critical network of nerves that controls arm and hand movement. When those nerves are crushed under your body weight for hours, they don't just go numb, they send stress signals to the brain, interrupt sleep cycles, affect circulation further, and over time, contribute to nerve damage that makes recovery from stroke or injury even harder. If you or someone you love sleeps this way, especially if you're over 60, it's time to change. Try sleeping on your left side arms in front of the chest, or gently at the sides. Use a contoured pillow to support the neck and keep the spine aligned. Avoid placing pressure directly on the shoulder or tucking the arm beneath the head. This may seem like a small detail, but it's not. It's the kind of change that protects blood flow to your brain, that guards your speech, your mobility, your memory. Because you may not feel the danger while you sleep, but when your brain loses oxygen, even for a moment, the effects can be permanent. And while this position might be the most common, there's another danger many seniors miss entirely. It's not how you sleep, but how often your body moves during sleep, tossing, turning, waking repeatedly. It might seem like restlessness, but it could be your brain sounding the alarm. And now that we've uncovered the 5 most dangerous sleeping habits that could raise your risk of stroke overnight, you may be wondering, what does safe sleep really look like? What can I change starting tonight, not just to sleep better, but to protect my brain for the long run? Let's bring it all together. And I'll walk you through the habits that heal, not harm, because prevention begins with awareness. And the power to change begins with you. Final wake-up call. Sleep is not just rest, it is protection. The hours you spend in bed are not passive, they are active. Your brain is working, repairing, balancing, resetting, and depending on how you sleep, it is either healing or quietly heading toward harm. If you have stayed with me this far, it means you care. You understand that true health is not just about medications or doctor visits, but about the simple decisions you make every single day and night. Especially at this stage in life, those decisions carry more weight. They shape the quality of your days and the future of your independence. Over the past few minutes, we have walked through habits that seem harmless. Sleeping flat with no pillow, turning onto your stomach, resting in a recliner, covering your head with a blanket, tucking your arm beneath your pillow, tossing, turning, skipping medicine, sleeping cold, drinking late, eating late. Each of these habits seems small. Each of them feels familiar, but together they build risk, not overnight, but slowly, quietly. They reduce circulation, they limit oxygen, they allow blood to stagnate, to thicken, to clot, and in an aging body with stiffened arteries and slower recovery, that clot is all it takes. One clot, one night, one irreversible moment. And yet most sleep-related strokes are preventable. Let that sink in. Most of them do not have to happen. They are not just fate. They are not just genetics. They are often caused by conditions we create unknowingly. That means they can be undone. That means you have power, and not just the power to avoid harm, but the power to protect, to support, to restore, because sleep is also a time of immense potential. It is when your brain clears waste, resets hormones, recalibrates blood pressure, and builds memory, but only if you allow it to, only if the environment, the position, and the conditions are right. So how do you begin tonight? Elevate your head slightly. Support your neck with a pillow that matches your spine. Sleep on your left side when you can. Keep your arms relaxed, not pinned. Avoid blankets that trap air or restrict breathing. Skip alcohol. Hydrate with water, take your medications as prescribed. And above all, create a space that allows your body to heal. A quiet room, a dark space, a supportive surface. These are not luxuries. They are requirements, because the way you sleep is not just a routine, it is your most consistent act of self-care. It is the one thing you do every day, without exception. That means it is also your greatest opportunity to make a lasting difference in your health. This is not about perfection. It is about awareness. It is about intention. It is about the difference between sleeping for comfort and sleeping for survival. And that difference can change everything. Your words, your balance, your independence, your life. So tonight, as you lay your head down, do so with wisdom, with the quiet strength that comes from knowing that how you sleep matters more than you ever realized. Because when you protect your sleep, you protect everything. You protect the parts of you that matter most, and that is always worth it.